So those are things that I never predicted. It was no longer my podcast. I used to look at it as mine because it was all on me. Like, if we can shoot, what a lot of the topics I very early on. But now, Pole Pole too. And by the way, all these girls, all of them are creative. Shiko, Ivy, Lorna in their own right.
Yeah. Every other time with Eric, I'm not sure the number of the episode. We don't really count per se, it doesn't really matter. Today we have a special guest, our first lady ever on Every Other Time. What an honor to have you. Jules is in the building. How are you doing?
Am I the first?
You are.
Oh my gosh.
What an honor.
What an honor.
I think it's important to mention, I like to enlighten my viewership that we actually go way back. As far back as what?
0?
Between age 0 and like 12.
Did you guys move out?
We moved out when probably I was 9, 10, 11. 10, thereabout.
No.
Class 6. Class 6 is what, 11?
Class 6 is 12. But you must have been...
We used to come back all the time though to visit.
Hang on. You guys moved out that early?
Yeah.
So that whole time when I was in high school, you guys were not there? What was Kevo doing?
I don't know.
Kevin is his older brother.
My elder brother, yes.
Yeah.
We go way back. Her brother was actually my very good friend. We used to play as kids. We used to play in action figures, as you can see here. I'm sure he would be really proud.
Daron needs to come on this podcast, actually.
I'd love to have him on.
Yeah.
So pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, Eric.
We're catching up so much off camera. We're like, yo, we need to actually now get to the podcast. How is life? How are you doing?
Life is good. Life is... What can I say? Life is just life. Half the time you feel like you got it, like by the balls, and the other time you are the balls that are being kicked.
So I'm all about having unconventional stories and unconventional by way of greatness. Yeah, I feel like you aspire for greatness in many ways.
What makes you say that?
You've taken some leaps of faith that most people don't have the courage to, and I can start there. You had a corporate job, and you left a corporate job to pursue content full time, and as we speak right now, I don't think there's anyone doing content from our region at a higher level. So walk us through that journey from having a corporate job, because you went the conventional route initially. You went to college, you traveled abroad for college, you came back, you started doing the thing that we're all supposed to do.
Yep.
And at some point, you pivoted out. You guys had the first big YouTube podcast platform, over 25. It's no secret, right? So what was that journey like? How did you transition from corporate to over 25 and content in general?
So the thing is, Eric...
Don't be humble, please.
Okay, and also, I may have questions for you before I answer that. Mm-hmm. Why is it every other time? Is it because it's like... every day, every other time. So
remember I used to do a previous podcast.
Yeah, the Grey Poo Pod. Yes. And I was a guest on there.
Yeah, fantastic episode. So what happened was trying to appease my audience in terms of availability. I have a day job right now. So every other time, I already set precedents that don't expect me to drop every Monday, every Tuesday. When you see me, man. When you see me, you see
every
me.
Every other time.
One of my viewers once said, this should be every time with Eric. So we're getting there. So
or maybe every other time.
Maybe every other time. So that's how the name came to me. And plus, I remember I liked rock. So there used to be a song, every other time. Na, 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 na. Yeah. So,
okay, that's interesting. I've always wanted to know, but I think we kind of think alike because that is thinking small, just so you know. I was told, because I have a YouTube channel called My Tiny Little Channel. And then I used to have a business.
Psychoanalysis already go.
Skincare, yeah. And I used to say, just a tiny beauty stop shop. And my followers would be like, why are you always reducing yourself? So even you, stop thinking you might or might not make it, or might not be available, or Have
you seen that psychoanalysis? It's a fair point. But I was just setting precedents that I don't know how often I'll be dropping.
Yeah.
My previous episode, I used to feel pressure from my DMs. When are you guys dropping? It's Friday. Where's the episode? What's the next episode?
Yeah.
I'm sure you know you've gone through that.
Pressure, yeah.
But I do know at some point I'm going to reach that fork in the road where I'll be forced to make a decision as to which am I going this way or am I going this way?
Yeah.
But until then, so we were on you actually pivot.
Yeah, and how I ended up here. You said something about... Sorry. That's me? Sorry.
No problem.
Can I decant into a glass?
Yes.
Our Johnny Lipa.
No stress, yes,
Seeing
no
they're
stress.
sponsoring Akina other influencers. Me, I stopped doing free posts.
Right now, that is a nameless iced tea she's having.
你好吗？谢谢你。我哋就 episode 13咯。You know to hit subscriber. Every other time with Eric. Episode 13. We're trying to get to 1 million. We ask that you subscribe. Jumping spider.
Those things are not healthy, though. You know that, huh?
I know they're not.
And I've been seeing you've been on some workout journey,
I am on a workout journey. I just
but once in a while,
I had a really, really long weekend.
every other time. You can have one.
I had a long weekend. It's Tuesday. I'm still recovering. I had family around. We had my grandmother's 95th birthday
Wow.
out of town. And then we came back to Nairobi. There was another party for a farewell with my cousins going back to the UK. So it was just, I needed, yeah. But back to that, you said something about greatness, like
Yeah.
aspiring to greatness, and thus the pivoting. Pivoting had nothing to do with greatness. I had no goals for greatness. I was just trying to survive, or to heed to this calling that would not shut up inside my psyche. It was too powerful to ignore, to the point it started to affect my wellness. Like, I was in a constant state of existential crisis, just always wondering, this cannot be it. Like, everything we worked towards could not, in my mind, I could just not reconcile that it has all been distilled to reply emails. I couldn't believe that was what work was. It shocked me every time. And I would always be like, this is what my folks used to wake up in the morning to do.
Super anticlimax, eh?
Yeah. And I was noticing that other people don't seem to be bothered by this. It's just me. So I definitely have a I've always thought there's something wrong with me, by the way. I don't know if it's a neurodivergent thing, but I always felt like there's something, I'm dancing to a different beat here.
I think,
But it was very subtle up until I got into the world. Then it was too loud for me to ignore. So the thing of pivoting, it was not a thing of, it was a brave thing to do. But by the time I did it, honestly, Eric, I feel like I didn't have any other choice.
the reason I say it's brave is because I believe, especially our generation and younger, there are a lot of people who've done the conventional route of school, college, comeback employment. And many people go through that existential thing for, wow, this is it. This is what the dream was. Oh my God, this is law. This is medicine. This is flying. And a lot of people don't answer that voice that was yearning inside you. A lot of people just go through the emotions, some until retirement, some reconcile it and just leave. I think maybe even our parents, some of them went through that. Maybe they're artists at heart, but they ended up accountants from start to finish. So to take that leap, especially 8-9 years ago, however long that was, it is you might not realize how brave it was, but heeding to that yearning is something really brave that a lot of people don't actually.
Yeah, and if then that surprises me. You know what? That surprises me, that there's so many people who have that conflict within themselves, because to me it looked like it was just me. And I think my question to God, or whoever might be out there, this higher power, would be, why was it so loud for me? Like, until I couldn't ignore it. I tried to. I was reading all these books about just appreciating about where you are. I used to sit in my cubicle and be like, okay, what are the things I appreciate about this job? Not the job, but I appreciate that I have a salary. I appreciate that I can, sneak out of the office and do all my errands in the middle of the week. I don't have to wait till the weekend. Like, I was doing all these things to try and, and I stayed there. It's not even 7 years. It's been 7 years, I think 8.
8 years.
8 years of me doing content creation, but doing it full time, it's only been 4.
So how long before? So it took you 4 years to let go of the corporate.
Yes. It took a long time, because I had already let go another time when I was working at a different company, and I was broke after that for so long. And I remember just thinking, I am never going to go back there again. So I did that stint if we're going back, I was working at that job, and then I resigned knowing that I'm going to go do my master's degree. But I know I resigned earlier. Like I had another year to be around in Nairobi and continue to build my career. But I decided to take that time to what can I say? I don't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing, but there's a book I read that was very popular, but now with what I know now is like it was almost like an unfinished book, The Secret. I read this book when I was in campus before even I graduated university, and it like just lit a fire inside me. So there was an ideology in that book around taking the first step and trusting that the staircase will continue to unfold, or like Jack Canfield, who was one of the people who are on that DVD.
We'll put The Secret up on the screen.
Yeah, I'm not, by the way, just to be clear, I'm not a big advocate for The Secret. I feel like The Secret was a part 1 out of a part 5 of things.
I've read it. In rehab, we were made to watch it, and I did some of the tests, and they came and it was scary.
Yeah.
They tell you like envision
visualize,
something.
yes.
And then, yeah.
And I think those things work, but I think The Secret was just, I feel like you need to read The Secret and then now go down, read more material by Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, Jerry Hicks. Then you're able, because the Secret is very like just visualize, and then but there's a lot of things that are blocking that, like pre-existing ideas or beliefs that you picked up as a child that continue to block this just visualizing. And I don't think The Secret covered a lot of that. How to break through the blocks that are actually preventing you from being what you want to be. So anyway, I'm just saying, back to that time, that was kind of what was in my mind. Now I had already been rogward by this Secret.
Who are you talking to at the time? Because by the time you're thinking and this yearning is so strong that you're even reading a book like The Secret, because we always use people as sounding boards, family, friends.
That's what I'm clarifying. I read this book before I started working. I was still in university. I had not even graduated. I read the book and watched the DVD. Did I really believe it? Yes and no. But there was just a lot of things that it pointed to that I remember from my childhood that I couldn't explain. And I'm like, I remember these moments when I would do these games, I would call them games, and these things would come to pass and I couldn't explain them. And I didn't know I was utilizing the law of attraction, which, whether you believe it or not, is always, it's law. It's a universal law. So I would play these games, and I feel like now as a grown-up, I was like, oh my gosh, everything has just come together in this moment, in this DVD/book. So that stuff started to kind of get into my psyche, because I always knew, even when I was in university, I'm like, I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But
what inspired the yearning for content? Is it your own consumption of content? You're like, I can do this. I can probably do this pretty well.
Okay, so to answer that question, I'm just going to fast forward now. We're no longer in that 19-year-old Julia who's read The Secret. What made me do content is this. All I knew, keep calling you Kevin, because your brother is Kevin. Sorry, Eric. All I knew is that, okay, I did not know what, how you can be like, I'm doing aviation, but I know I really, really just want to get into construction. Like I want to build stuff. I did not know what I wanted to do other than what I was doing. All I knew was that this is not it. So I did not have I love to bake, or I just want to do crochet, or I just want to be an actor, or I want to be a screenplay writer. I did not know what that other was. All I knew is that I need to do something that is using more of my creative reserves. Not just... The problem solving at work was too easy for me, is what I'm trying to say. It was boring. Selling and pitching was boring. I was so bored. I could do it in my sleep. I was like, what are we solving here? Like, what are we, like, just so people can buy more, like the idea of marketing at that side of marketing, I just felt like it was not
It felt generic.
It felt generic, and it just felt like it's like you've entered the wrong party. Like you're in a rugby party, but you need to be like in a sorority party. It's like we're the party, but we're the wrong party. That's how I felt my whole career, right? I was there, but I'm like, is this, So I just knew my interests. I knew where my interests lied. I knew where my curiosities were, but I could not be able to package them into baking, aviation, painting, writing, medicine. It doesn't have to be creative fields, but you know what I mean?
Do you think
I just couldn't package them. So when content creation came around, I just felt like I'm going to do this for fun. And I'm going to do this on the weekends, because in the weekends is when I would feel the despair the most. Because from Friday evening, Monday is coming. I always used to feel, people used to say they feel Monday on Sunday, like, oh, Monday blues on Sunday evening. I used to feel like when we are closing on Friday, I'm just like, should I even switch off my laptop? Should I shut down? Still be here on Monday? Kind of thing. Yeah. So now I needed something to do on the weekends. And that's when I started to shoot and edit for Over 25. That was my thing.
And do you think you're a victim of our education system? And the reason I ask this is my brother and I always share a lot. And I have always been a creative. From the year you're talking, it was inside you. But we probably went to 8 schools, and extracurricular was more of a very thing on the fringes, right? So we never had access to express some of these things, but it doesn't mean they didn't live inside us.
Yeah.
So do you perhaps think that also that played a part? Had you maybe been in a different education background, some of these things would have started manifesting earlier. You'd have not ended up going to necessarily college the way you did. You'd have not ended up having to have the corporate job the way you did, and you'd have been arts from day one.
Yeah. 150%. Although I answered that question with some hesitation, because I also believe in you are where you're supposed to be. Like, you've been put here to have those challenges because they're completely aligned with your individual purpose. But at the same time, I know that this 844, it was not tapping into my, what do you call that? Tapping into my greatness.
Artistic expression.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. When I was young, we had 7 subjects in primary school. By the time you guys did 8.
So you're old. Sorry?
We had 7 subjects in primary school. You
old.
guys had 5.
I'll say, so you're old.
I'm old. No, but we did. By the time we got to class 8, it was 5 subjects. But when we were in class 6, I think is when they dropped...
Woodwork.
No, it was...
Arts.
They dropped art, home science, and music. So now it was just maths, English, Kiswahili, science,
GHC.
and GHC. Those 5 subjects. In 844, you got to do the technical subjects, the art, home science, computer or music from class 4. And I remember in lower primary, so lower primary was class 1 to 3.
Yes.
Upper primary was standard 4 to
8.
In our primary school, St. Nicholas Primary School, shout out Mrs. Njuguna, Mr. Njuguna, I think they passed away. One of them passed away. But
R.I.P. if you did pass away.
Yeah, St. Nicholas. That was my primary school. We had an art room. And that art room was run by a man called Teacher Ogutu, or Mr. Ogutu. We used to call him Teacher Ogutu. I don't know where are you, Teacher Ogutu? Please find me. Teacher Ogutu was the art teacher for upper primary. And I remember him allowing me to enter the art room. The art room had now all the projects that the class 7s and class 8s were doing. Their painting projects, calabashes,
Collage.
those things, paper mache. And all I used to do at lunchtime, as soon as we finish eating, you're allowed now to go play outside. I used to go straight to the art room, right? To just hang out with these older kids and see these things they're doing. And I would just help around. And he probably has no memory of this Teacher Ogutu, but he let me enter the art room. And all I wanted to do was get to class 7 so that he could teach me art. There were other art teachers for the class 4, 5, 6, but we was like, I just want to get to class 7 so Teacher Ogutu can teach me art. And then we got to class 6 and they dropped all the arts and the whatever. I didn't care for music. I didn't care for the other stuff. I just wanted to do art.
Arts, yeah.
Now, fast forward to when people would say stuff like, when all these new age books about finding your purpose are coming out, a lot of them try to take you back to your childhood. Like, what is it that you loved? When I was trying to figure out what is this thing that I should do as a creative, I couldn't. The one thing I do remember is just I was sure about loving art. I was sure about loving English. Let's say I loved my English teachers. I loved English as a subject. I loved literature in high school. I loved actually GHC as well. So, but the one thing that always stood out for me was I wanted to do art.
So arts and humanities, that I resonate
I
with that.
guess, yeah. And then now you jump to class 2. Let's jump now to, I'm trying to explain to you my, like, who I am. It's very fragmented, but that's how also my thinking was. It was very fragmented because I didn't have this guidance. This 844 did not give me guidance. They've taken away my art. So now I have to just do the 5 subjects. And then the possibility of doing art is high school. I go to high school. I'm called to Moi Girls. So I go to Moi Girls.
My girls is Cubs.
Moi Girls is Cubs. This one here in
State House.
Apana, Ukotoi.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Woodley.
Which one is on State House Road?
State House Girls.
State House Girls
Yeah,
Road.
yeah.
Wow.
State 2.
Yeah.
So I went to Cubs, but Cubs didn't have art. Cubs, the technical subjects were home science and agriculture. Me, I was not going to do agriculture. Now, look, I wish I did agriculture because I would love how
Does anyone pivot from home science into some practical skill set that's really useful?
I don't know.
Because I can see the pivot from arts,
Yeah.
but home science,
Home science. I have a friend who did home science and now she runs.
she's a home scientist.
No, she has a bunch of restaurants because home science had a lot of cooking. Yeah. Shout out Kosewes. Stacey Osewe, she's the one who runs
Oh,
her
wow.
father's one of the branches.
That's pretty big.
And she was very, very, very good in her home science stuff. Yeah, so I go to Moi Girls. I didn't stay in Moi Girls long. Story for another day. My mom transfers me to Riara Springs. I've been in Moi Girls doing home science. I go to another school. They have art. Still 844. And as soon as I got there, I said, yeah, I'm doing art for sure. And I went to the first art class. And I remember the teacher said, she just dumped a bunch of books on my desk. She's like, you have like 2 terms worth of notes to catch up on because you haven't done art since you were in like class 4 or 5 or whatever. And it just hit me at that, like, there's no way if I had never done, for example, home science and I go to a new school, I'd be like, there's no way I'm doing home science from scratch. So I'll just continue the subject I hate.
Yes.
Because I'm not catching up on two terms worth of work. But for art, it didn't even occur to me that at that point, I think what I'm trying to say is it just hit me at that point that, oh my gosh, I'm actually like behind by 6 months.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. And those little things are the things that I remember from my childhood where for me, the arts were just always... It was calling me, but there was nothing nurturing it per se. Even when you look at the way KCSE marks art and design, 70% of your grade is on theory. 30% is on practical. And the notes, the way in you did physics, right? You know how your physics from Form 1 to Form 4, your notebooks are like 10 of them.
Yes.
Art, I had 1. The theory is very little. I knew everything in theory of art, everything. I got an A in arts. So I'm wondering why that little, amount of notes is equating to 70% of my grade. And then that theory that you have to sit there and do a project from second term until December, that's your KCSE project. And then on the actual day, you're doing a painting thing for 4 hours and then it's only getting 30%. It doesn't make sense.
You've used a keyword. You said nurturing. And nurturing starts from home. Nurturing extends to school and then society at large. Art for sure was not nurtured in our context. And I'm speaking specifically to people who did 844. Arts was something, I also wanted to ask you about your inspirations because we grew up watching movies as well. So you're getting a view of the world and what's out there and how people are doing things. So you start imagining how you're going to live your life. But people want to box it into chemistry paper 1 and physics paper 2.
Yeah.
So by the time you are actually deciding to now leave your employment, or rather to start on the weekends shooting, are you telling your parents? Who are you telling? Like, yo, this thing is living in me. And the reason I'm asking that, I'm almost like I'm asking myself, because we always look for validation. You want someone to tell you, yeah, do it. But I realize the older I get, the more independent I become. Sometimes you just have to do it against all the noise, against all the advice, people telling you don't do it. So for you, did you run it by anyone?
Ero, I didn't have anyone. Me, I'm telling you,
Friends?
I was alone. I remember a friend telling me, you're resigning. Like the one friend who I used to think gets me had such a judgmental tone towards me. And she'd even make fun, like, oh, so now you're going to start dressing like those artists.
Like a hippie?
Yeah, I don't have my wig now. I'm just doing braids because I'm broke. Like, by the way, being broke was synonymous to being creative in my time. Right now, these Gen Zs, who I wish I was a Gen Z, God. Like the artsy kids, the earth girls, those are the cool.
Yeah, they're cooler. Yeah.
They're the cooler crowd. Us, the artists, wasani, they were always at the back room closet.
Or being accused of smoking weed.
Or just having no direction. And that's why for me, my identity was so disorganized, because on one end, I was good in academics. Well, I forced myself. Really, I learned how to cram like crazy. So my grades were not bad. So the expectation for me to go into conventional employment was high. But then on the other hand, there were no role models. Like there were no, even when I used to look at like my art teachers, bless them, I was just like, what do you guys do? Like, and I lived in a relatively comfortable upbringing. So the messaging I would always get is, oh, so you want to be a broke artist? Where will you live after all this schooling we've put into you? This is, so there was a lot of confusion and disorganization. And just to answer your question, because of that, I had no one to lean on. It was a very severely anxious time for me. In fact, that's the first time I said I felt like anxiety and depression. Because I was lost.
And your academic ability.
I was lost, man.
Your academic ability is a survival tactic. I always say this about this. Like, this was my way of, for me to have a decent, steady income survival, normal society where I can now think about other things. I need that flow of steady income.
Of steady income. And remember, sorry to interrupt you. Remember, Eric, we live in a country that poverty is not far. We are seeing it.
Yeah. We were discussing 3-4 months of any small car, and we're right at the bottom.
Yeah. Like we see it every day. We see it. You walk out from here, you can see the struggle. There are beautiful places in this country, but there's also a lot of pain and despair. That is not the fault of the people who are experiencing it. It is purely systemic and political, but we see it. So there's a lot of fear of poverty with people who are doing unconventional work. Yeah.
And that's why, for me, I'll probably hold on to this until every other time.
Hold on to it. And I think you should. I would never ever tell somebody quit or do what I did. Have a backup, man. Know that, because not having money can take you off the track of even that thing you're chasing. So even me, just know I was doing these things side by side for a very long time.
You died so others can live. So how do you, how do you come up with the group over 25? How do you select these specific people for that cohort? If there are not people necessarily you're even sharing your dreams and aspirations, or the fact that you have this yearning, how did you settle on them? How did you guys come together?
Yeah, so my girls, Shiko, Ivy, Lorna, we're actually a group of like 7 babes. That's how we've been hanging out since uni. Shiko, there's 2 girls from the group that I knew from high school. We were in Moy Girls together, but briefly, so we didn't really build a bond. But one of the girls who's not on over 25, who was with me in Moy Girls, we're still friends, like besties until today. Who's that? Kathy.
Okay.
I don't think you guys know her. She was Miss Cabs for a long time.
Okay.
Pretty girl. But yeah, so for me, it was just, imagine it was, I wanted to have a place where we just have girl talk. And I wanted 2 of my friends of course, they did not know the things that are going on behind. In fact, I remember one time having lunch with Ivy at cafe, and I was just telling her, man, I think I'm going to quit. I feel like that. I was telling her all these things I'm telling you. And the look on her face, she was like, I had no idea that.
And this after you've already started the...
Yeah, we're in over 25 deep. And I'm telling her, should I quit? What do I do? And she's like, she had no idea that I had this conflict about my job within me, just to show you how much it was such a personal struggle. And I feel like no one in the world could relate to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, just coming up with the girls, it's just, I picked the girls who I used to hang out with. These are the girls I used to party with since we were in campus.
So what was your first experience putting yourself out there? Because now the moment you're out there, you're out there. And of course, immediately comes judgment. Judgment being your viewership, they either like, don't like, or they have a lot to say or a little to say.
Yeah.
So what was your first interface with that? What was that experience like?
Back then, it was actually very, very easy. The way YouTube looks now is not what it looked like then, one. Two, we didn't even call them podcasts. We were a YouTube channel. Nowadays, a podcast in the traditional sense is audio only.
Audio, yes, yeah.
Now, if you have a podcast that doesn't have a YouTube channel, is it a podcast?
Yeah.
We don't know. Things are changing so fast, right? But back in the day, I even remember telling my girls, I had other friends who had YouTube channels, like, about hair or makeup. That was never really my thing. I love hair and makeup, but it's like not my thing. And I would see they would get like 1,200 views, 2,000 views. So I told my friends, listen, we'll probably only get like 300 views, 400, let's not get discouraged. So I had very low expectations. Me, I just needed an outlet.
Yes.
Yeah.
They say, two is many, three is a crowd. You guys were, on camera, you were four.
So it started as 3. The plan was always to be 3. And I'd send a message to my girls and I say, I'm recording every Saturday, every other Saturday, actually. Every other Saturday. We record every other Saturday. And whoever is available comes. So the first day, Shiko came. No, the first day is only Lorna who came, I think. And then Shiko came. And that was it. I was like, fine, we're just doing the 3 of us. So the episodes early on, it was just the 3 of us. And then Ivy really wanted to be a part of it. So she asked Shiko to ask me. And I was like, we'll be many, but maybe whatever. I think we can fit. And those days I was shooting on a phone. We were shooting on a phone. I was editing on my dad's laptop. I taught myself to edit. I started with somebody. I used to work at Capital FM. So I went to one of my boys, Kaboche. Now he's so big. He was also one of those artists who are like trapped. We were in the system, both of us. Like, we need to get the fuck out of here. Can I cuss here?
Yes,
oh,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, so
every guest asks by the way.
But me, I always do it and then I'm like, oh shit, can we? Because I talk like that a lot. But you need to look up this guy. His name is Kabuche. Anyway, he used to be a videographer at the newsroom. So I sat with him for 2 hours on a Friday evening. And I was like, please teach me how to edit. I want basics. I knew the basics, but I was like, just show me how to, safisha. And that's how I learned how to edit. And yeah, it just started as I wanted it I didn't want pressure, planning, projections, what. I did that, at work.
So you are leading the charge pretty much.
Yeah.
If you're shooting and you're behind the shooting, behind the editing.
Yeah.
And you're the one who's convening, you're the one who's saying we're shooting this.
Yeah,
thing.
we're shooting in my bedroom.
So, because the reason I keep coming back to this is to merge ideologies, ideas, speed for more than one person, an adult people with different views on life. How long did it take before you guys started having ideological differences? Nothing personal, just ideological differences about how the show should look, when you should shoot, what the vision is, how soon, and how soon before people were like, okay, it's not yours, it's ours. Like, what was that like?
I would say maybe about 2 years in is when I don't know if it was the timeline issue or where we were at when the money started coming in.
The money. That's always. If you look at podcasts world over, Joe Budden, all these guys, money always brings that.
It does, because I had a different way of looking at money. Shiko had a different way of looking at money. Lorna had a different way of looking at money, and Ivy had a very different way of looking at money. And it was no longer now a thing that if it backfires, it's me. It has backfired on Jules. It was now the four of us, right? Fans had already started saying, I identify with Shiko. I identify
Naturally.
with Jules. Exactly. So those are things that I never predicted. It was no longer my podcast. I used to look at it as mine because it was all on me. Like, if we can shoot, what a lot of the topics very early on. But now, Pole Pole too. And by the way, all these girls, all of them are creative. Shiko, Ivy, Lorna in their own right.
Yes,
We are
yes.
all in marketing. And I think a lot of people in marketing are like shadow artists. So I just want to point that out. It's just when the money started to come in, I think is when now, for me, let me talk about me because I don't know what the other girls were going through. For me, it was just like, I didn't have a big vision for the brand. So I was very comfortable doing my little thing that I can manage and control. But you see, when brands come in, they dictate some things from time to time. There's a pressure now to have a certain standard of things and a way of talking and da-da-da. And I didn't want my creativity to be...
You feel like your format was being interrupted.
A little bit.
And when the first check comes, are you divvying it up for us equally?
How we did it was 60% went back into the business. We never used to touch it. And then the 40% we would split four ways. It was very little money. Over 25 was not a place for us to make money, but I think we just didn't know how to do it. And for me, I never saw how big the brand was.
So do you think also the audience plays a part? Because naturally, like you said, people will identify with Jules, another one with just Ivy. So do you think the audience plays a part in separating you guys also? Because I'm sure you used to look at comments and people would say ABC. Do you think that plays a part?
Oh, you mean in separating us? Like
in creating differences?
No. Well, not for me.
Okay.
I don't think so. For me, the differences came in how to manage money, how to look for money, and how to manage how to move from a hobby to a business. I think I wanted to stay in the space of hobby for as long as
Because it's safe.
possible. Yeah, for me, and I didn't want to do the same stuff I was doing because my work was kind of the same. You pitch, you da 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 da, and I'd be like, so are we just now another, business? And I wish I had somebody to help now with that. Okay, listen, let's divide roles where you are the creative director, Jules, and this person does this person. We didn't know, honestly. And remember, because we were pioneering in this space, there was nobody else ahead of us
to guide you guys.
to guide us. So we were just, it got to a point where we were like, let's just use Over 25 as our creative outlet, and individually we have our own brands on like our individual social media platforms. That's how that's what it had to come down to. But in terms of the audience separating us, I don't think so.
I know I've had through backroom channels that, for example, like Sauti Soul, to keep that unity going, they used to have like a life coach, they used to have therapy together, because I mean everyone is lifing in all different directions, yet we have this common thing. I've done a podcast before with a co-host, and I know the challenges of just moving at different speeds, different ideas, different timelines, different targets. And you've touched on something that's so important for, I think, people who are aspiring to do art or do art. Can it be art? That laissez-faire art forever?
No.
Or at some point it has to have viability. And that viability means you treat it as a business. So I think that's a challenge many people, perhaps even by own admission, you went through.
Yes, that's what I went through. So I like, for example, who can I say? Like Lorna was very business minded. A lot of people see Ivy as the business minded person. She is, but those at that time, Lorna was in fact, she was our finance. Lorna was our finance the whole time, and I would feel that thing of I don't know what it is about creatives and feeling like their art is being tainted or just being tainted by the corporate arm. I don't know what it is, but I had to grow myself out of that. I had to learn how to look at my art as business. you know, because you go around crying how you wish you could wake up doing something you love, and it's right here knocking
Yes.
on your door, and you're like, no, please don't fuck up with my art. You know, I'm sensitive about my shit. Like I didn't know. I was just feeling
So what I'm learning,
outside of. So for me, what I'm trying to say is, if you're trying to if your art is going to become your business, you really have to start running it like a business. And find a way to reconcile those feelings of discomfort inside you, that you feel like the structure and the rigidity, not even structure, because I thrive in structure. I think it's the rigidity, the creative rigidity. There's a fear. I think there was a fear of being told that your art only goes so far. You know, it's like almost like, it's like I'm rebelling against what I grew up feeling.
yes.
And I was seeing this arm that I need to depend on coming to put its hand here as well. That's something I wish I kind of learned early on.
So what I'm quickly
Yeah.
learning about art and artistic expression, having the avenue, for me, I'm starting to treat it like a business that I love, as opposed to a business that I have to be a part of. Yeah, that's the MO I've taken in terms of this whole experience of moving forward with doing a platform. So how long does Over 25 run?
Over 25 runs for, I think it's 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to
7
keep
years.
coming back to the cohesion thing. And not because I'm trying to have a viral moment.
It sounds like you are.
Because 7 years of doing something.
Yeah, I feel like everyone just focuses on the end. What was the thing? What was the reason?
No,
was
no,
there
no.
beef? Was there animosity? It's like that was such a small part of it. It literally just accumulated to 1 year of we were feeling like we're in such different places. You're walking into a room and we don't know who Over 25 is anymore. We had changed.
Because 7 years is, a lot.
I am telling you, you've changed. People get married. People have kids. People now start looking at the things they want to talk about on air. Before we just used to talk. No one even cared. Like, we used to have our 2,000 views and we really feel like we made it.
Yes.
So we would just talk anyhow and reveal so much. And sometimes I can't even watch those old episodes. I'm like, well,
You cringe, eh?
What am I saying?
What about production? When you watch back, I think we talked about this on phone.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you look at your earlier stuff, and because you're also learning about production, and you want to shoot yourself.
Please.
But
Please,
a
yeah.
lot of times you'll be surprised the audience don't notice certain nuances. But you, as you develop as the creator, you look at an angle and the lighting.
And the camera was like that for 45 minutes.
And you're
Like this. On the
you're like, oh my goodness. My very able producers here have taught me so much. Now I see things a lot differently.
Yeah.
I was definitely I'm not looking to ask, so what was the
Yeah.
straw?
There was 7 years
Because-
of amazing content. You know what I mean? There was 7 years of living life with my girls, seeing them every weekend. Other friendships were struggling. Me, I was never struggling. People used to ask, how come you guys are still friends? And we used to be like, what are these guys talking about? Ati, how do you maintain friendship? How? We never used to fight.
So then-
all through until money came in. And it was that money, it's not that we are fighting to have the money. We are fighting on how money needs to be managed once it comes in. We are fighting on how to engage with a client, how much value to give this client. And that happens when you don't understand your business and you don't understand your value, because you don't have anything that is saying that this is as far as we can go, or this is as much as we can do. We didn't have anything because we are the first ones.
So maybe the
Even
question
clients didn't know how to charge for things like, so are we getting what mention? Is it like you don't know, then there's Instagram that's now come, it's becoming a business avenue. There was so much.
Did you have a low
learning.
ball?
Did I have a what?
Low ball when now you look back, I could have gotten more.
Oh,
and vice versa.
absolutely. I think Over 25 would have been bigger than it ended up being if we knew what we know now.
So yeah,
For sure.
Maybe just one, as we move from that, maybe one question I'd ask then: what would you do different now, knowing what you know now?
What I would do differently, one, is to stop. I'm a very big, I can do it all. I want to learn how to edit. I want to learn how to shoot. I want to learn lighting. I want to learn angles. I want to learn sound management. I don't know if it's a personality thing, but the first thing I wish I did early on was delegate for a team. You see how you have a team here?
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of merging of my wanting to do this as a hobby and learn new things as my hobby. And now it's becoming a business faster than I can learn this hobby, So that's why I wanted to do all the shooting and the editing and the learning how do you balance this? I loved editing. It was not tedious for me, but I think it also slowed us down because the girls would look to me for direction, and I'm one person. But when you have a team, somebody can show you something that you will not see. And somebody will also help you expand and challenge you. But no one was challenging Jules.
But to be fair, just also tetea you kidogo, having a team also costs money.
It does.
For my audience, when I was on the up and up before I got a stable job, when I was earning peanuts, Jules actually sponsored 2 of my episodes on a previous platform I used to do. She paid for production, for shoot, for everything, and I'm forever grateful. The reason I bring that up is because this lived in me for so long. I knew exactly how I want to do it, but I didn't have the
funds.
The funds. My wife can bear me witness. Like, I used to talk about podding all morning, noon, and night as I'm going to teach people flying. So there's that duality. So you wanting to do everything is also, maybe you didn't even have the resources to just have a team. So right now, I also have a team because I am able to have a team. I'm not yet making money, which in fact brings me to this point where I need to tell guys we're going to be putting a number here in a PayPal. Send your contributions. We still have a lot of gear to buy, a lot of to keep this show going. Please support the vision. So I also understand you in that regard, and I remember the pain of, in fact, that's why when I got my current job and I was able to buy 1 or 2 things, start this vision. I remember, because obviously I'm married, you have to go seek, not permission, but I have to I want to buy this and this. It wasn't even a discussion. She was like, please, you've talked about this since I've known you, and you've been unable to do it. The time you sponsored 2 episodes, I was not able to do others, and of course I could not ask you now so it was painful inside to not be able to do what I want to do. So I don't blame you for trying to do everything on your own, because that crossed my mind at some point.
Mine was not a money thing.
It wasn't money?
No, I wanted to do everything. I was like, we can do it. Why are we paying someone else? I can't shoot. We just need this camera. I just need to learn how to, that's what I'm saying. Mine is different. Now, I see things so differently. Eric, let me tell you. But I just wanted to, I wanted to be the guy behind the camera. I wanted to, okay, this is how this sounds. Okay, I wanted to hear, I don't know what that is. I just wanted to learn everything. But I wish I delegated earlier, number one. That's something I would do differently. And find a way to scratch that production itch elsewhere. Even if it means, because over 25 has become this monster that's bigger than me now, let me do my own thing for fun on the side. And now this is the business. I had a lot of issues letting go of production, editing, and the girls knew. So even they would bring up those, it was like, Jules, maybe we get somebody to help us edit? I'm like, okay, you guys don't want me to do this job, but it's okay, So I wish I did that. I wish we did not sell ourselves short. There's some clients that would come with some useless budgets, very insulting budgets, but you just take it because you don't know your value. So I just wish we learned the power of negotiation or the art, the skill of negotiation. I wish that we got into very, very clear role sorts early on, and maybe have an internal agreement, contractual agreement, that the back ends with Lorna for finance decisions, the back ends with this one for admin, the back and vision. Ivy was so big on that, and I used to be like, why? We're just having fun, go with the flow. Me, I was a very go with the flow. Ivy was like, what's the vision? She got somebody to help us do what do you call this?
Vision board.
Not a vision board. A strategy. So we sat in a room, we had flip charts, and I was like, oh my God, we're back into this life that I hate. But I didn't see the bigger picture, I just went along because these are my girls, I love them, and they must know something I don't. But the Ivy is very big on strategy. So I took a leaf from that book, or a page from that book, for my own personal brand. So those are the things I wish I started treating it as a business. We started treating it as a business just a little bit earlier. I think all of us did not understand our potential as a group. The power we had as a
Could have
group.
been colossal.
Yes, I don't think we understood that. And I think probably it hit some of us after.
Have you thought about doing every so often a reunion behind a paywall?
I would love to.
So
I
that's
don't, was it not you I was talking? It wasn't you I was talking to you
about Patreon.
No, about Patreon. Me and you had a chat about Patreon, no, but about over 25. But I would love to. You know me, that's my
There's a bag there. There's an obvious bag there. If you guys were to just gather around.
I think what we need
exclusive.
I think all of us, the four of us, would love that in our own way. But we have to be so clear about what we're doing now. Because we can't just go in how we did before. Like we're having fun on Saturday afternoons. You know, we're shooting and having a Chardonnay on the side and we're just babbling and just talking and having fun. That's what, now it's different. The landscape of podcasting is different. We now have individual brands. We have
yes.
partners that we have to appease. It's a different, so I know we can do it. I
But
just
it's
don't think it's time yet. And I know that time will come for the four of us again. I just don't know when it is. I know it. I know it'll come at some point.
So you've built your brand as being part of a group, and then eventually now your own brand, you stand on your own. How is it standing on your own and having now full autonomy on whatever it is you're doing, whatever ventures you're doing, whatever approach you want to take? How has that been for you?
You know, I also started a lot of these projects while Over 25 was going on. So I do love the autonomy when it comes to creativity. I like to experiment. I like to let's see. Sometimes when you're with other people, it's tough to do that because the thing that has lit up in your spirit has not lit up in theirs. And sometimes it's hard to describe that to somebody verbally. They just have to trust you. But on the flip side, it can get confusing because I'm the kind of person who goes through things over and over and I second guess and I'm like, should I? And I feel like with the group, I would say something, express a dilemma, and it's like, let's just do this, and I go with that. So decision making can be faster when you're alone, but it can also be daunting because you don't have that other person there to be like, nice, okay, let's just, you're by yourself. Yeah. So I like it. I like it in that sense, but there are some times I miss that having somebody to bounce ideas off of. So what I do is I build relationships. I've built relationships with other creatives and kind of made it clear, like, so when I get to a point, I'm going to, you see how I just texted you the other day and I was like, yo, Eric, how do I put what did you call it?
Paywall.
A paywall. How do I get some content to be exclusive on this and this and that? Like I do that with other people. I actually even bounce ideas off of people for reels for clients. Like I have a thing on my phone called Real Ideas. It's just a brain dump. So whenever a client comes, I already have like a bunch of things here. And now I'll come to you and I'm like, so I had this concept. Ebu, help me build it. So that's what I do because I know I do thrive in community, but I am also very much a lone wolf in certain aspects of my creativity.
I relate to both of those things, especially sometimes I've yearned for someone to be able to bounce ideas off because sometimes I'm like, sorry, Jabba, am I, this is a delusion? But in the same breath, I've had also very negative experiences in terms of trying to express an idea. It's not well received because they don't understand. And then eventually I do it, it works out and I'm like, never again. Because someone can easily sway you from your path. But switching gears, now that we've gotten the conventional Jules out the way for the audience, I want to switch gears all the way up. On our previous platform, we touched on something that I got so many questions after the fact that I was never equipped to answer because we didn't broach it all the way. And I want to touch, we've talked about the secret, we've talked about, that's an element, manifestation is an element of what people would call spirituality. What's your approach to God, spirituality, without necessarily... You didn't tell me that was off limits.
No, it's not off limits. I just, like, Kenyans are so close-minded. Eric. I think I'll talk about it, but I know I am just about to shoot myself in the foot.
This is why we're doing every other time with Eric. We're pushing the boundaries.
Bruh.
Don't be shy.
As long as you tell me yours.
Of course.
If we are dying on this cross, we die, the both of us.
Fair enough.
We'll be, I know they will come and light me up like a witch. Huyu ni. What is a witch in Kiswahili? Ewe, mchawi. Huyu ni mchawi. We must light her the stick.
After
and
you.
then I'll burn in green flames.
Just maybe to make you feel comfortable. I grew up Christian, but I have a lot of questions about the doctrine. There's so many things that don't add up.
Yeah.
That we're kind of pigeonholed to not ask. If you ask, it's heresy. In fact, asking is my dad always told me, somewhere where you cannot question is the wrong place. You have to, especially when it comes to someone telling you how to think and what to think. If it's unquestionable, then you need to question it seriously, because that's just someone trying to control you. So for me, I'm very open-minded. I don't claim to know it all. I am on my journey. I believe there's a higher power. Can I define it entirely? I don't know yet, and I don't think anyone does. Yeah. I know my producer right now is looking at me keenly, staunch Christian, but
oh my God.
but
Unge, you should have warned me.
No, it's a free platform.
He might cut out the bad parts and use all the bad teasers to make sure I burn at the stake.
No.
But God got me. Don't joke. Yeah. Well.
No, it's not. This is not TMZ. So
that is a tough one. It's a tough one. It's a tough one because every day I realize how, I dare even say, backward a lot of Africans are since this white man came and beat them into their religion and to their conformity. People think Africans were just lost and then we were saved and we saw the light when the missionary came. No, the missionary came, took away our way of making a living, with the whole introduction of tax. And this is a very simplified version, like with the tax, the hat tax. And so for even the way our societies were initially designed to help groups expand, it was taken away. Now, this one guy has to pay how many shillings per child in his hand. These things
on his land.
On his own land. And if you don't, then, and you have to also conform to the religion because Jesus has come to save, you know what I mean? And everything we are doing is witchcraft. Libation is witchcraft. Praying facing Mount Kenya is paganism. Acknowledging our ancestors in our rituals was witchcraft. And sometimes I ask, who do you think is St. Mark and St. Paul and even those are the ancestors. You know what I mean? So the thing is, there are two things I don't like discussing. Politics and religion. Because there is no amount of talking that, I'm not trying to, people are too attached to their paradigms. And that's my issue with paradigms. Like you said, they don't allow for a questioning. Because if you are questioning, then technically you are not. If I question, then technically I'm not a Christian. Technically. And that's the issue I have with those kind of things. Growing up, I was, brought up in the church. And in Standard 7, I went to church camp. And this pastor was like, you need to get saved. And I used to always ask, what are we being saved from? I used to wonder if there was something that grown-ups are running away from that they need to be saved from.
That's a fair point.
I'm telling you,
yeah.
11 years old, I'm like, what are we being saved from? Saved from a life of sin. And I'm like, damn, okay. Because you were born with sin. And I'm like, but I didn't choose to be here. So there was all of these questions that I had. But I also had a huge people-pleasing streak in me. And I wanted this God to see me as non-rebellious, as agreeable. This all-encompassing love, from up there in the sky or wherever. I wanted to be a part of that. And so I got saved. I didn't know what I was being saved from, but I got saved. And in fact, nilianguka, that church, I was like, I felt the spirit and I fell. And then immediately after that, I went to that pastor. I'm like, so what are we being saved from? How did his blood...
Wait, did you actually fall? Like where you touched?
Yeah, I did. But I'm not sure anymore what it was. But I really did. And let me tell you, I loved that. I loved my time in the church. I completely, to just fast forward, I served in the church. I was an usher. I believed in everything. But the older I got and the more I got into the world, I remember I just started to feel like this cup that you promised that was supposed to be full is not full. There's so much despair in the world that I could not understand. And I've talked about this on different platforms where I've said, in summary, I told God, I just need 2 years. Give me 2 years, peaks. I've taken a break from this your thing. I used to feel like a square peg in a round hole all the time. I tried to do the right thing. I had my WWJD bracelet. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't, I was a good girl. But then I started to have these questions. And I asked God a lot of questions about the state of the world, the state of humanity at a very young age. A lot of people in the church would just be like, you just have to believe it's a faith-based thing. And I said, sawa, but why am I still feeling the discomfort? And at the end of it, this was my personal conclusion, was that I had 10 questions. My 10 questions were never answered, ever. Ever. And by the way, in those 2 years that I told God, I want to go to the club, I want to talk to boys now, every day there was a source of conviction. I'd be in a job and then I see a spray painting, John 3:16, like those things would always happen. And then after the 2 years, the conviction finished. I said, am I going to hell now, And as I was saying, I had so many questions. And I was like, I just need you to explain to me, why did this happen? Why is this happening? Where did you come from? Why are we here? Why did we all have to be converted? Did all the Africans before us go to hell? Therefore, why did we have to? Were we not all praying to the same God? Why do we have? Are the Jews not praying to the same God of Abraham, the God of Islam, and the God of the Jews, and the God of the Christians? The guy on top is the same, technically, right? But then there's a split, and then even inside the Christianity, they're like 5,000. So I was like, why? I never got those answers, ever. But I got answers to questions that I never asked that only confirmed, and this is my personal experience, nobody can take that away from me.
Yeah.
That confirmed to me that there is a higher power. Now, whether it is the God of, the one we know, or I choose my faith as Christianity because it's the only blueprint I have. So even when I put my head down to pray, I don't say I'm just praying to this source energy or higher power. No, I know I'm praying to the God that I was taught as a child. Jesus is the Son of God. There's the three, the Holy Trinity.
Yes.
That's what I'm praying to, because that is where my education in terms of my Christian and my spirituality is. However, do I think that the only way to God is through Jesus Christ? I don't know. All I'll say is I have doubt. There is doubt that is present. Do I think that all the Jews in Judaism are going to hell because the only way to the Father is through Christ? I don't know. Do I think all the Muslims are in the wrong faith? I don't know. Do I think the Buddhists are lost and they are praying to statues is now idolatry? I don't know. All I'm saying is there is doubt that has been introduced. And this is by no means a call for a Christian to come and try and save me. I don't want. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying this is where it has reached. And for me now, my new set of beliefs as a result of that is not something I'm willing to talk about here, because Kenyans don't question. They don't question why they used to pray to Nyasai and not,
I think
Ash Wednesday things. They don't question. They just say, it's the way.
I think even where you've drawn the line is still so far from what people are willing to admit. So a lot of, let me speak for Kenyans, because that's where we're from and that's where we are. A lot of Kenyans are going through exactly what you described. There are so many questions. So Christianity came, missionaries.
It was forced. They think the missionaries came and we said, oh, no, tuli, pig when you're told if you want to eat, you have to pray, you have to submit, or you'll die of hunger. It was slavery. It was actually brutal. Conversion was brutal. Missionaries, those schools that your grandparents went to, the nuns, ask them how they were treated in those schools. It was not at 11 rainbows and butterflies. So sorry to cut you short.
No, those are some very fundamental questions. In fact, where you've done the line, I would not have expected you to go further, because still you've come so far. People are not willing to talk about the fact that, like you said, people were brutalized into belief or subjugated into belief. And then in this vast world that we exist in, do you know sometimes we'll be flying maybe from Mombasa at night and you just look up at the vastness of the universe. Yes. How can I be vilified for questioning, wanting to understand what is all this going on, all the different nuances? And then you're telling me if I believe this, all these guys are condemned. These 2 billion plus people are condemned. Yet some people are even better human beings than I am, but they're condemned to eternal damnation because... So there's too many questions. And then when you look at how it's used for control.
Yes, religion was a form of, it was a very powerful tool in colonization and slavery.
Forgiveness being one of the biggest tenets, like forgive your oppressor, because for oppressing you.
Was it forgiveness or actually just saying that God picked a group to have slaves and we are the lesser?
We are the lesser.
Yeah. That was actually taught. And
that was actually accepted as the norm.
It was human dogma.
Look at.
It was not Christian, was it? It was man's dogma.
It's warped.
Okay.
But without, we can't not talk about, and not politics in a conventional way. We're not going to say party A and party B, but just to tie into the whole faith thing. For me personally, in the last election, for example, I was bamboozled. I won't say that I voted, but I was bamboozled by this guy who's, faith. You're a faith guy and you're a good guy. Oh my God. And the system is after you, but you're praying and you're crying. Oh my God. Do you know that guy has made not only me, but many people question this whole faith thing, because a guy checks in and does everything opposite of what he claims to stand for. I'm tying this to the control thing. If that was probably all calculated, knowing that people are gullible. Look at what's happening in churches nowadays where people are abusing their congregation. The other day I saw a guy removing guys from the front row because they're not giving enough. Pastor Nganga, I'm not scared of saying Pastor Nganga, literally chucking guys from the front row, telling them, now you guys are now relegated to the back. So when it comes to questioning, and in that context, even for a church like that, you're not even allowed to question anything. And for me, that is a big no-no.
I think you should question and seek God in your questioning. Honestly, we are not being encouraged to build our own personal relationship with God. What is being done in a very subtle way is, humans, we tend to fall into our groupings and into association, whether you like it or not. You feel more comfortable in, I've seen Eric there, I've seen Kevo here, I've seen so and so. So psychologically, you're comfortable being part of this group. And that's why you have a group who are probably well-educated people who can come together and put 15 million shillings aside for their pastor. Meanwhile, their grandparents in Gishagi can barely make it to the end of the week to eat, but they must give to the church. To the pastor, rather.
Man of God.
Rather than trying to figure out how to expand your personal relationship with God and your trust in that divine. For me, like I said, it's not that I don't believe I 100% believe there is a God, but there are things inside this, what I'm calling man's dogma, that has now been warped into religion, that is too messy for me. It doesn't allow me to question these things I wish they would they would teach people how to build their personal relationship with this higher power more than the church. For me, that's, even anyway, that's how I feel about this whole thing.
I call it Wi-Fi. I tell my wife all the time, we don't need a conduit. We both believe I can talk to God direct. I don't need to go to you or to so-and-so to intervene on my behalf.
But there is a place for the church, though. I think there is value in community. But that's what I'm saying. That community as well, that human psychological, I don't know if it's a need or it's just a predisposition to move as a group. That's why you have studies on mob justice.
Yes.
You have people who went to the capital to burn. These are people who have 9-to-5 jobs, they have 3 kids, and they are being rioters,
Yes.
in Washington. There's something that just switches. There's a mentality,
Mob
a mob
psychology.
mentality. Yes, that's group psychology is something that once the people at the top tap into that, you just move like sheep.
Which brings me to, you are apprehensive about talking about faith. Naturally, you're a brand. You're apprehensive about talking about politics. Naturally, you're a brand. But for example, when we have something outside the norm, like what happened a few months ago, we've never had that ever, at least in our lifetime, that we can actually remember, where people almost damn near toppled Gava over a finance bill, reject the finance bill that ended up with protests, culminating in that famous day where guys actually breached parliament. Now, navigating having a brand and there's a movement that's bigger than, I think, almost all of us. How do you go about that while still maybe even supporting on the sidelines or not supporting? Because in this movement, people are being berated for either for supporting or for not, or for being quiet. If you're too quiet, guys are being, if you're someone who's in the public domain, if you're too quiet, you're called out. If you're too loud, or you're part of it, it was so mixed and murky. How do you navigate that as a brand while maintaining brand integrity?
I wasn't thinking about brand integrity at that point in time.
The movement was bigger.
For me, yes. That's all I'm going to say about that. For me, it was bigger than that. I did not. I mean, you care, but then it just gets to a point. Man, for how long are we just going to sit on the sidelines and like kind of watch things happen and hope they'll sort themselves out in the future? It was just different for me this time. And I did know that this was a risk that I was...
You went to town?
I did.
Wow, brave.
I did, yeah.
But now, 3 months later, things look like they're worse. I was telling someone previously that it's like we slapped Gava and now they are kicking us. Like, would you say anything has changed for the better?
I think we still have a long ways to go, but whether the government likes it or not, what happened in June is something that cannot be undone. Some people actually still don't know what is happening. I have friends who, are having drinks and they're like, "Oh, that you mean this is what's going on in the background?" Some people still don't know, but there's a seed that has been planted in the conscience of the masses that cannot be unplanted. The idea that the power is with us, I think we just knew it in theory. But the fact that we can push the government to the point where people are being abducted, like the law is being broken in broad daylight because of fear. Right now, the government is just moving in fear. There are a lot of things we don't know that happen behind the scenes. They still think that there was somebody behind all of this. There was an instigator behind all of this. But I don't want to get into that so much, Eric. Me, all I'll say is, for me, that movement, and it's still happening now. If you go anywhere and people get together, they still reject Ruto. People are still chanting these things. We used to believe, this government, there's nothing you can do. Even when we were on the streets, people were still saying, that bill will still go through. And I was like, I had a feeling I thought it might still go through, But for me, it was like, this is our time to show that now we know. we've been played a lot. We've been played a lot with a lot of propaganda but not even the creatives. If you look at even the comedians, there's some of these skits, all of them are all inclined to showing that we see you.
Yes,
Bro,
yes.
we see you.
Yes.
Before, it was almost like we were not, and that's what I'm saying. It has planted something in like all of us from different classes were singing the same song. And
For the
that's
first time.
For the first time, and that will not be taken away. And it was going to have a very big implication in the next general election.
My only fear has been that it can reach a point where everything is so watered down that because we're like what was happening with the Vampire Diaries, if something is repeated every day, it can reach a point where people become desensitized to the fact that things like this are happening on such a level. Wow. But yesterday I was watching something to do with because they're saying that AI, if you don't incorporate AI in everything you do, including content, if you don't incorporate AI in business, whatever trajectory you're trying to take, there's a point where you're just gonna fall to the wayside. I had someone talking about things like entertainment or on demand. Are you familiar with that concept?
Like Netflix?
No. So what's coming is at some point your likeness you'll be able to license your likeness. So Jules' likeness will exist. You'll get paid for it. So someone can say, I want a podcast with Eric about Jurassic Park, and using your likeness and my likeness.
Gosh.
Within snap of a finger,
so I'll be like, I want a movie with John Travolta and Jennifer Lopez, and this is the plot.
Yes. That's coming. So
that's wild.
Normal movies will become a novelty. I always say this duality really bothers me. Like we talked about, people are talking about quote unquote Murima. On the flip side, on another side of the world, guys are catching rockets. Guys are you've seen the robots that are coming out. So for me, does this duality bother you? Like, do you ever feel like we're living in Mesopotamia when there's like the future is happening elsewhere?
No, I think it only just came up with you. So maybe I need to just like expose myself a little bit more into this AI world. I think my AI knowledge imefika ChatGPT.
Yeah. You use it?
I just started using it often. Like this, honestly, like the past week. I didn't know how much I could use it. So now I've been using a lot of ChatGPT instead of Google, because then I don't get just like pages. I actually get responses from this artificial/alien intelligence. But yeah, I'm not really, I don't know if I am the person to ask anything about
AI.
Yeah, I need to educate myself a bit more. Yeah.
Fair enough. So let's talk about, before we leave, let's talk about your platform. I know you're part of 2 podcasts. One is on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
So This Is Love. Yeah, I listened to a couple of episodes by there. Quite interesting.
Did you?
I did.
To the end?
The most recent one, actually, that's one I listened to. Actually, on my drive to the airport, I listened to it.
Matthew or Jockey and Joy?
Matthew. Yeah.
Matthew and Scarlett.
Yes.
That's season 4.
How did you come up with that concept? Because that's the pseudo element. Allows people to share things they would never share. So much so I was trying to see if I can recognize. But that was a voice something.
Yeah.
Distortion.
For that one, I had to do voice distortion.
Because I was trying to hear, do I know that person?
Yeah.
So how did you come up with that? Because it's a brilliant concept.
So, a lot of my content is inspired by my life, if not all my content. Yeah. I mean, where else does your inspiration come from? It's from what you see, what you absorb. And I had a very tough dating life in my 20s. Like, my relationships would not work. Or let me just say, I was very much attracted to
damaged goods.
Like, I really was attracted. Like, if you came to me well packaged and healthy and hi Julia, I'd just be like, hi friend. I don't know why. Okay, now I know why. I've gone through enough therapy to kind of understand the root cause for a lot of my decisions as a young girl in her 20s. So I would get into I had two very notable dysfunctional relationships in my 20s that I think completely changed me.
Traumatically or just
Both. I had never experienced a desire so powerful and also despair so deep. And Eric, I'm a very, I don't know what to call this kind of person. Like, I question God. I am very philosophical, I think is what you can say. And I just used to look at like the irony of life. Like, the girl who was the hoe in high school or in uni, and the chick who was the bitch, or the one who was those are the ones who ended up with the good guys. Not all, but like, this is just me analyzing people I know. I'd be like, give me a female name.
I'm gonna send any names we know.
Okay. How did Modoni end up with J-Mo? And then J-Mo is a good guy.
Yeah.
Or how did Mike end up with Felicity? And Felicity is such a good girl, and this guy was such a piece of shit. You know what I mean? I used to analyze relationships a lot. But what I love to observe is human behavior, human relationships, the human condition. That is like my pastime. I like those kind of things. Those things fascinate me. And so sometimes I would look at my relationships and I would be like, why it feels like I'm dating the same person, even though they look like they're different. The second time round, just a more polished version of the broken guy. But then after you've peeled a few layers, it's the same thing. And I stumbled upon I used to write a lot. I used to journal. I even had an anonymous blog, and I would write about these things that I'm questioning in religion, relationships, life, childhood, my childhood. And I remember I stumbled upon this entry where I said something like, there was just something missing in this person, I think, who was pursuing me at the time. And I was calling it, I was comparing it to Chemical X, the Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah.
There was sugar,
spice,
and everything nice. And then Professor Utonium accidentally added a secret concoction into the mix. Chemical X. And thus the Powerpuff Girls were born. And I was like, yeah, I feel like this guy has everything, but there's just Chemical X. He's missing. And I didn't know what it was. And what it would look like to me, it would be packaged in mystery. So mystery, an inability to read you off the surface. I liked a challenge. I don't like people who come with their feelings in front. I wanted to dig deep into your pain and show you the rainbows and the butterflies. I am the one. So I did understand at the time that I was Bob the Builder. Like, I would hear women say, like, don't be a fixer or don't be a
caregiver.
And I'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm not the kind of person. But at the end of the day, like, I was doing that. And so when I got to this stage in my life that, like I said, I have a lot of ideas. I dump ideas on my phone. And now, the more I started talking to people, and I'm very much into the podcasting space. I have now this over 25, I started to talk to people a lot about relationships. And it just hit me. There's a lot of trauma. Like, relationships are the place where a lot of your childhood traumas come and expose themselves. When people are fighting, they're not fighting. Eric and Jules are not arguing. It's Eric of 6 years old and Jules of 5 years old bishanaing about something. It's an old wound. It's an old pain, and I started to see these recurring themes in different people's relationships. 1, 2, I always try to create content for that 20-year-old, 23-year-old Julia.
Yeah.
And so I said, I think we should have a space. In fact, I wanted to call the podcast initially Alone, where people talk about relationships that were very defining. Because what I came to learn is it's in these relationships for me, and I think also for other people, that you learn about your who you are. You learn through
Hindsight, like looking back.
Yes, this is before I started the podcast. I was like, I learned that, okay, I go for this chemical X. I'm looking for this chemical X. Why? Why can't I be happy with somebody who is fixed? Why do I go do all the work in myself? I'm doing all the therapy, but then I go and look for the broken part. I'm not attracted to the person who is well together, who has healed. To me, ends up as a friend, and I don't have a sexual attraction towards this person. Why? Those kind of things. So I'm saying it's in hindsight. And for me, I came to realize that it's through one in life. We never learn from the good. We always learn from
The bad, yeah.
the bad. And bad doesn't have to be traumatic. It can just be a small bad, like, my bill went up by 300 bob, so now I've learned to switch off the light. Learning comes from the lack, the negative. And negative does not have to be bad. It can just be the lack of this. And that is the only place learning happens. Now, when it comes to you yourself as a human being, you don't learn this just by reading a book. You learn by the dysfunction that you see that comes out in the relationships you have, whether they're romantic or non-romantic. This is just my life observation. And so I said I should create a space where people can come and talk about, honestly and genuinely and authentically, like me, talk about a defining relationship in their life that broke down. But at the end of it, you're able to answer the questions. How did I contribute to the breakdown of this relationship?
To be conscious enough to actually...
Yes.
And I noticed you're specific to not allow bashing of a former lover.
Yes. Because you were there. You're bashing them, but you were there on your knees one night, honey. Like, we cannot be bashing this person. This is somebody who was there in your life to teach you a lesson. And you'll only learn it if you allow yourself to be taught. Otherwise, you will continue finding yourself in the same situation, same script, different cast every time. So that is what inspired the podcast. Those two things.
And the distortion of the voice is to protect the person or the former lover? Or
The person. Because for men, this is the thing with the podcast. I have a lot of men who will DM me, but they don't want to share their story. Or they want to share their story, but they're like, but I don't want my voice. Men are very private when it comes to vulnerability.
Yeah.
When it comes to showing off the biashara that they've just made last night, they will be very boisterous about it in their groups. They like to show off those things. But the vulnerabilities, the pains, those softer parts where women tend to very easily expose to the public, men don't. So I decided, okay, for the men who want to come and share, who don't, they really want to share because they have already gone to, you can only come and share because you've healed. And you're able to call your own bullshit, right? But this guy was like, I want to share, but I don't. Or rather, I was noticing guys want to share, but they don't want to be recognized. Even if I've changed the name, they're like, I don't want. I said, Sawa. I guess for these guys now, I need to figure out this AI and do some nice voice
Has anyone
distortion.
ever been recognized from the story?
Yeah, people have been recognized, but those are people, so far no one has minded. One or two people have. Yeah.
So is dating, would you say, is your forte? Dating relationships in terms of content?
Do you know what? It became, me, I didn't know that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Me, I didn't know. Me, I thought I'm just doing me.
Because your other platform that you're a part of, this one is more shared, right? It's related, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
It also a lot of relationships.
No.
The snippet I watched, because my wife watches it.
Which one?
I can't tell you the name of the episode.
Yeah. But like we talk about, like the last episode we talked about colorism. There's another one we talked about doing life scared. So it's not only relationships, but I think it's something I'm known for.
Yeah.
It's something I feel, now I've come to realize later on, it's something I'm known for. But you see, also, remember, this was a huge bane of my existence in my 20s. It was a very painful... Bro, I dated a very bad guy. Let me tell you. So I was...
Have you shared this
shocked.
publicly?
Yeah, I shared. The end of season 2 has my story.
Okay.
I think my story.
For my viewer, if you want to go hear about Julia's trauma.
Yeah. That's really... And for me, I got to a point in my life, I started to realize that everything bad we go through in this life, Eric, everything, there is a reason behind it. Not just there's a reason for everything. It's not as lighthearted as that and whimsical as that. This is how I look at it. when you ask God to give you a car, God will never give you a car. By the time you get the car, you won't even realize it's the answer that's being the prayer that's being answered, because you've done so much. By the time the car came, it was the next logical step, or so you thought. Kumbe, the problems you are now being presented with, I'm feeling discomfort in my job. Oh, my boss is hating me. Oh, sijui nini. Let me just start a side hustle. Guy wamenibia pesa. Okay, now I've learned I have to get into contracts fast. Nini. All these problems were a solution for this car you've asked for. But we've been trained since we were children to look at problems as things we have to solve, and you focus on the problem, when you really should just be accepting that in this hurricane, there is a quiet part of it. You understand?
That takes a level of consciousness to reach.
Yes, and guess what? Even with this theory, when I'm in the shit, I still forget. So I have to remember, hapa kuna kitu. I need to learn. This is the prayer to some. I mean, it's an answer to a prayer. We are always presented with problems, and it's the way we function as humans. Everything was just given: the car, the house, the body, the money, the health. We would be so bored. We'd all be getting high because there is nothing to live. We thrive by solving problems. Right
Creates
now,
purpose.
the problem is I need to get home. What's the problem? I need to drive and sit in traffic. When I sit in traffic, what am I doing? I'm listening to a podcast. I have learned something from that podcast. You're not understanding that this thing is answering an ask. Whether you call it a prayer or an ask you have asked, it's all part of the machinery. Yeah. I even forget what I was answering, but
the origins of
the podcast.
And is dating your forte now?
Yeah. So dating became my forte because of that. Like, because it was, I was saying it was like the bane of my existence. And one day I remember thinking, I have so many stories and so much knowledge from this era of my life. A lot. That so many people were coming to me with questions when I became a public figure. And I said, you know what, let me just say what I wrote in my journal. I was like, I'm going to Issa Rae the fuck out of this. Issa Rae is a writer, actor, performer that I love. She did Insecure, Awkward Black Girl. And she used all this like
things she went
through. And like Insecure is like one of my favorite Black series ever. Do you know Insecure? Do you know Issa Rae?
I've heard Charlemagne talk about her a lot.
I love her. So I remember I was like, you know what? This cannot have just happened for this, when I hear people in dilemmas about, my hubby did this, I'm always like, but have you, like I feel like I already have the...
And objectively. Well, I'm also hearing that you're also objective about your approach into how you talk about, how you look at situations in dating. It's an objective approach. Sometimes, people want to point a finger before actually introspecting and saying, my role to do, what was my role here? Because it always takes two to tango.
Yeah.
So what are you working on currently? Apart from your podcast, your platforms, I've seen you doing a lot of brand affiliation. What are you currently working on? What does the future hold for your brand?
Yeah.
What excites you?
No one ever asks me that, Eric. I love that you've asked me that. And by the way, I just want to say this for the record. Eric is such a good interviewer. This guy is going to, if you keep at it, you're going to be the Joe Rogan. Okay. Kenya, I saw Prezo's episode where he said...
Joe Rogan is going to be the me.
Joe Rogan is going to be the you. Joe Rogan is the Kenyan version of you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. I think you're really, really, really talented in how you engage with your guests and pivot.
Thank you so much. You've really given me a challenge. You've really danced around things, but you've given me some great content.
What have I danced around?
We don't have to get back to that.
Okay. But what am I excited about? Let me tell you what I'm trying to solve. Right now, I am trying to stop giving out free content. I need to learn how to monetize some of these gems, like So This Is Love. Even just my brand presence, I want to be able to monetize it, because I used to just do it because, I just want to express myself creatively and but now I'm like, the business thing has clicked. It has been clicking. So right now I'm trying to figure out how to really get into a production space that is making me direct income, not only through sponsorship or a brand affiliation kind of thing. I also getting a call in my spirit to get back into entrepreneurship. I did have a business that I ended up closing or stopping during the pandemic because now my podcast stuff was picking up and I was unable to balance both. Only because I feel like the scalability of my personal financial goals right now cannot be met only by what I'm doing.
Do you
right
engage
now.
as an entity, or when you're engaging with brands, is it Jules or is it an entity that you own, like a business that you own? That's for my own learning.
Right now, it's me. If they're coming to me, it's Jules.
Okay.
Yeah. But like, for example, if they're coming to over 25, there's a company.
So do you have a
behind that.
company called Jules?
No,
Okay,
we don't.
that's
We
what
don't.
that's what I'm. So when you're engaging, it's you're the brand.
It's me. For now, yeah.
I also asked what inspires you. What currently now are you looking up to, and you're like, this is inspiring. This keeps me going. Could you look at? I look at Joe Rogan, Sean Ryan. I look at.
I have a list here.
There's so many people.
Yeah. Let me just get it on my phone.
Any guys? Any males rather?
Trevor Noah. I like this space he's in right now as a podcaster.
Looks a bit free.
Yeah, I like it.
I think the other format took a toll on his mental. That's
Do you think so?
My own analysis. Bashing Trump for 5 years. At some point, it must have gotten creatively even exhausting.
Just a moment.
No problem.
I need to find this list.
If you haven't subscribed yet, every other time with Eric, please do subscribe.
Yeah. So I'm just going to tell you, these are a lot of people I look up to. And this list grows and also shrinks. Sometimes I'm like, not anymore. Issa Rae is at the top there for me. I'm a huge fan of Angie Martinez and how she's just evolved through the radio space from the 90s up until now with her podcast. Guy Raz. You know Guy Raz? He has this podcast called... He was the host of the TED Radio Hour, where they would...
NRP, on NPR
Yes,
radio.
on
I used to listen
NPR.
to that. Yeah.
Yes, and now it's a different... It has a different host, a lady who hosts that show. But I loved it I loved when Guy Raz...
The topics were so diverse. I used to love
diverse.
it.
So they'll pick a topic or a theme from a TED Talk. And rather than, a TED Talk is only like 16 to 18 minutes, they go into that thing for an hour, that topic, whether it's a study, an ideology or whatever, and they really, really go into it.
Capital FM used to air it Sunday night at around...
Thursday night.
It was Thursday night?
Yeah.
I remember being in
Thursday
the car.
night, like at 11 or something.
I remember being in the car with a quarter and
Yeah.
just listening.
Another reason I'm such a huge fan of Guy Raz is how he moves from... So he did TED Radio Hour, and then he was also the host and producer of one of my favorite podcasts called How I Built This. And he talks to entrepreneurs and gets the story, not just the real behind the scenes of how they built Airbnb, how they built Canva, how they built Ben & Jerry's ice cream, how they built Spanx. I love how he does his research. I'm like, I wish I could have a team that could help me do like that. And I also just like him as a creative. You can see the questions he's asking also for himself when he's talking to entrepreneurs, to business people.
He's curious.
Very curious. And so he inspires me a lot because for me, that's, I was over 25. I mean, it's related, I promise. And I have a podcast called So This Is Love because there's so many things in my life that inspire me. And my whole life, I've always had the challenge of feeling that I need to be a thing. Like, am I the chick who talks about makeup or money or hair? Or I've never had a thing. My thing is where my life is at right now. And Guy Raz also represents that for me. He also has another podcast called Wisdom from the Top. So rather than talk to entrepreneurs, he's talking to people in the corporate ladder. CEOs, HR managers, of different big multinationals. So that's another guy. You just listen to how he built this.
I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah. John Alanamu is at the top there for me because he's... Actually, that's why when you sent me his episode, I was like, did you know I'm a huge fan of John Allen?
I should be doing his podcast soon, actually.
Oh, you're going to be on his?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there is Oprah. I don't need to explain.
Yeah, Oprah is...
Phenomenal. Queen Latifah.
Queen Latifah does a podcast.
She has a show, but she's also an actor. And she's also a performer, like an artist. She's an all-round creative and a very, very good businesswoman. If you like watch her to people who do stories on her. Yeah, there's a reason I put her on this list. I can't remember why. I should probably be putting that there. But there's something I watched and I was like, yo, Queen Latifah is not just Queen Latifah. She's big. She's rich. And she started with being a rapper.
Yes, yes.
And that's something that's really aspirational. I don't know if you guys know this one. Her name is Nora McNerney.
We put her on the screen, AJ.
Yeah. So
Nora McNerney.
She has a podcast called
inside
Terrible. Thanks for asking. So a lot of these people who I look up to are either in the film industry, in the podcasting space, or both.
Wow, Jules, it's been a pleasure. I must say thank you for coming to Every Other Time. Thank you for all the trailblazing you've done on behalf of content creators, especially in this format where you sit in front of a camera and talk to the camera. You went from a phone, you've diversified, you've advanced. And what I've heard through your whole story is that you keep finding yourself and you keep sharing this new version of yourself in real time, which takes a lot of guts and being able to be vulnerable like that. A lot of people relate to that and identify with that. So a cultural phenom, I must say. The first lady ever on Every Other Time with Eric, a true pleasure, a childhood friend. It's been an honor having you. I usually shake the hand of my guest, but for you, I'll high five.
Why?
Huh?
Because I'm a woman.
Did I say
I
that?
want a handshake.
You said that. Okay. There's your handshake. Every Other Time with Eric, it's been Jules. What a pleasure it's been. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And I'll just let Jules say one last thing to the camera, to my fans as a parting shot.
To the fans,
Yes,
to your fans.
To the fans.
Thank you for supporting Eric. I see your comments. You guys love him. And let me say what my mom always says to my friends. Thank you for loving my daughter. Thank you for loving my friend. I think, Eric, you are sitting on a gold mine here. And for you people who are supporting creatives, please, 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 please continue to do so. Share this podcast widely. If you think anybody will be supported, find this conversation beneficial. Like, sharing is, I think, really where it's at. So thank you so much for supporting the arts, men on this podcast. I think you have a larger male following than women.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I hope that you were able to get to the end. And if you have and you want to share on So This Is Love, or you're curious about So This Is Love, please just go to the description box of this video, get a link, figure out go and see what So This Is Love is about, and understand why I want more male contributors. I'm tapping to your audience there.
Absolutely. Every Other Time with Eric, it's a wrap.